Hello everybody, Adam Cleary from 442 here, and football, that continues to be mad, doesn't it? Chelsea have finally announced the signing of Moises Caicedo, and within the next possibly even few hours, they could announce the signing of Romeo Lavia from Southampton as well. And this has led to a whole host of people on the internet saying, hang on, why would you want to sign Lavia if you've just signed Caicedo? And I can clear this up really quickly for everybody, right? The reason you still want Lavia, even if you've just signed Caicedo, is because Lavia is great. He's really great. He's really great. So, oh, sorry, you wanted more than that, did you? Okay, right. Well, I'll see what I can do, Your Majesty. Okay, so first off, to the people asking why you'd want Lavia and Caicedo, very simple question for you. Have you never had a Sunday dinner? Like, you could, if you really wanted to, try and make the argument that roast potatoes and mashed potatoes are just... they're the same thing, aren't they? I mean, they're both just potatoes, aren't they? They kind of taste the same. They're just a delivery method for the gravy, after all. But if you get offered roasties and mash, you take roasties and mash. Like, I know they're in the same position of, like, the food group chart, or whatever you call it, but they're different enough and both delicious that you don't deny yourself that. And just to stretch this metaphor to its absolute breaking point, if over a 38 Sunday dinner season, you were for whatever reason without either roasties or mash, you'd still be pretty content if you had the other one. And crucially, going into this season, as anybody who watched Chelsea versus Liverpool will tell you, Chelsea did not have either roasties or mash, and that particular dinner was crying out for some kind of potato accoutrement. I think that's the right word. So, by extension, potatoes are obviously very important to what Maurizio Pochettino was cooking every single week for the next 8 months, so it'd be stupid to only buy enough to make one version of them. And if you are now sat there thinking, just hang on a second, wait a minute, doesn't this channel normally talk about like stats and data and actual verifiable facts rather than just going on unhinged rants about potatoes? Then yeah, that's right, we do that, so let's do that. Right, so here are Romeo Lavia's FB ref stats as kind of a number 6 compared to Moises Caicedo, who is going to be his teammate, to Paulinho, who was probably the standout player in that role last season, and to Fabinho, who has probably been the standout player in this role for the last few seasons. Now, there are some very obvious takeaways from looking at all these next to each other. The first one is that you can see why Caicedo was valued at over 100 million. You can see why Paulinho was just so important to Fulham last season, and you can see why people started to think that Fabinho was on the wane. Those aren't the kind of numbers you've been posting recently, but they're still pretty good. But as far as Lavia goes, the takeaway from looking at his numbers is that he's just pretty good. They're not particularly remarkable numbers. He clearly does a little bit of everything reasonably well. He's a solid player in that position. So why, you could be forgiven for asking, all this hype? Why all this money? Well, and it's funny, you're going to kick yourself on this one, right? When you compare his numbers to Caicedo, arguably the best player in the league at this, and Paulinho, arguably the player in the league who had the best season at this, and Fabinho, arguably the player in the league over the last few seasons who is the best at this, he's pretty good compared to those three. At 19. Lavia should not be posting comparable numbers to players like Paulinho or Fabinho for at least another 3 or 4 years. If you sat there going, well, hang on a second, Caicedo's there, isn't he? He's still 21. He's 2 years further down the developmental line than Lavia is, and he's still comparable to him. So the very short version of this video is the reason you'd go and get Lavia, regardless of who else you've got in your squad, is because he is not a guaranteed starter for a Champions League level side right now, but he will be in a year or two. Cast iron guarantee. And the beauty of Chelsea, the beauty of this transfer, is that they are not a Champions League team at the minute. They hope to be, again, in a year or two's time. So, ta-da! See, the levels where Chelsea will be wanting to throw him in, he's already perfectly comfortable playing at. And by the time they're at the levels he's not, he will be. Thing is, though, and I know I did just say cast iron guarantee, that was probably a little bit strong. Anyway, we're talking about things in the future, right? These are all hypotheticals. They haven't happened yet. And the only way they are going to happen is if his development continues on this upward trajectory. And the only way that will happen is with game time. And so, by extension, the other question everyone's asking is, well, is he going to get enough game time? Chelsea haven't got the burden of European competition to provide them with all these extra minutes for players. Will he play enough? And well, yes, I genuinely think he will. Like, the reason I use that whole Sunday dinner analogy is not because I'm losing my mind, although obviously that probably did help a bit, but because they are different players. Like, so think about Caicedo's best attributes. He's an incredible tackler of the ball, which we saw at Brighton. He's incredible at progressing up the field and evading presses and being a central part of the build-up. Lavia has all these attributes, admittedly not to the same level, but he does have them all. But what he does have over Caicedo is he is, if not necessarily a better passer, a more dangerous passer. Caicedo is fantastic at progressing the ball up the pitch with his running and bringing others into play and going around people, but what Lavia did, and this was a great weapon for Southampton last season, was play these line-breaking, killer, really incisive passes. It's annoyingly not something that's backed up by any data, but the eye test will tell you that when Lavia gets his head up and he has the ball at his feet, he can find players in better positions than Caicedo can. And that's a pretty valuable thing for Chelsea to have if, as expected, Fernandes is playing considerably further up the pitch. Means for whatever reason, if they are required to go more direct, he hasn't got to drop all the way back to be the player to do that. He can leave that to someone like Lavia and continue to do all his good work in the final third, which, as we discussed yesterday, video's right there if you didn't see it, he's very good at. And also, while Caicedo is a much better tackler of the ball, he reads the game and he makes these brilliant interceptions and he just goes through players and he wins it that way, Lavia has something he doesn't, and that is just one of the best bail-you-out recovery runs in the Premier League. Like, if we look at the difference in their numbers here between tackles and interceptions, yep, Caicedo is miles ahead of him, but blocked passes and blocked shots, that is something Lavia had to be good at Southampton, given how open they were, but it is also, conveniently, something he just was really good at. And that means in any sort of game state where the play is stretched, where Chelsea are really committing, he's a slightly more valuable defensive midfielder to have than Caicedo is, because if you bypass Caicedo with a pass, that's probably him out of the game, whereas Lavia is no bypassing him. He will just hunt you down. And just so I've got myself on record as saying this, while I do think Caicedo is better in all of these regards, I don't mean that Lavia isn't also at a top level for them. Like, he does win the ball back brilliantly. He has a great tackling technique. And then there's all the other various things that can just happen across the start of the season. I don't think in a straight shot between him and Caicedo he's ever going to start ahead of him, but there's no reason that doesn't mean that Chelsea can't play with three at the back and use all of them. And because they're all really good at six, you can have this kind of system where they all constantly move around, and imagine trying to defend against that. And there's also, like, Reece James. Like, Chelsea is so much better as a team when he is on the right side of defence and he can bob up from that position, but he still hasn't put his injury stuff behind him. He went off against Liverpool, and yeah, Gusto came on, but I would probably rather in that situation, purely for his ball carrying ability, have Caicedo over there. And if you do that, well, you haven't got to worry about what you're losing in the middle, because you've got mashed potato, Romeo Lavia. So I do think genuinely across the course of a season, you will see games where they start Lavia, Caicedo and Fernandes all at the same time. Whether that's a tweak to the system, whether they decide to play Fernandes in the 10, again, not the best use of him, but you'd have a really solid base to build from. I think there's enough flexibility and enough game IQ in these players and in Pochettino that he's a great option for them to have. And just one final point in all of this, about money. If you think the reason why Chelsea and Liverpool and also Arsenal were pushing so hard to get Lavia in this window is because he got relegated with Southampton, so he's probably a little bit cheaper than he would have been, then that is not the entire reason. Southampton bought Lavia from Manchester City just 12 months ago for a measly, let's face it, £10 million. But City did not let him go because they did not rate him. They let him go because they did not have a viable path into the first team for him. They could not give him anywhere near the game time they knew his development required. If you remember, they had a plan for Foden, they've got a plan for Palmer, they've got a plan for Rico Lewis. They do not have one for Lavia because, well, they play one single number 6 and Rodri is playing there, and you've also got Calvin Phillips. He's not getting a look in. Now that was 12 months ago, and City are very aware that things can change. It hasn't really worked out for Phillips. Maybe Rodri wants a move, maybe he leaves, maybe he gets a bad injury, maybe they play a crazy new system with loads of number 6s in it. Things can change, and City really did rate the player that Lavia could become, and thus they inserted deep into the bowels of his contract a buyback clause. Now, I would argue if there wasn't a path into the first team for him a year ago, there almost certainly will be in 12 months' time. So the reason all these teams are trying to get him right now is because it's either right now or it's probably never. So, as a result, it looks like he's going to Chelsea and he's going there right now. And I personally think that is a brilliant bit of transfer business. unless you're Liverpool. In which case, terrible. Sucks. And before I go, just genuinely want to say a little thank you to everybody who commented on yesterday's video saying like, oh, can you do one for Lavia, please? I'd like to watch that. Made me feel like a somebody. That did, because I just sit here and do these to a room with no people in them, so that was nice. People wanted to know what I thought about this, so there you go. Hope you liked it. And if you're now sitting there thinking, well, hang on, I've got a really good idea for a video with players you want to see, tactics you want discussed, game systems, anything you think I'd be remotely good at, please get that in the comments, and I'll have a look. And of course, as ever, all of the feedback, criticism, comments. Someone said I looked like Tom York yesterday. That gave me a little bit of a laugh. All in the box below. And of course, please do, if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to 442. Hitting that subscribe button is the one thing that really helps us out. It just shows the progress of the channel and lets us do more stuff. That and sending it to all your friends very publicly on social media going, have you seen this? It's great. In the meantime, though, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, everything at Adam Cleary, CLERY. The 442 socials are in the corner for the entire video. I don't know why I read them out, but you should still buy the latest issue of the world's greatest football magazine, the season preview issue. The best one we do. Here's a preview. Up in stores now. Go and treat yourself to that. And until next time, said my name, said what you could do. That's everything. Bye.